Once upon a time, in the heart of the Ethiopian highlands, where the air was thin and the skies stretched endlessly like a canvas painted by the gods, there stood the Pawpaw Mountains. These mountains were not like any other. They were shrouded in mystery, their peaks often hidden behind veils of mist, and their valleys echoing with the sounds of drums that no one could quite place. The locals called them the talking drums, for they seemed to speak in a language only the mountains understood. No one knew where the drums came from, but everyone had a theory. Some said they were the voices of ancient spirits, others believed they were the heartbeat of the earth itself, and a few even claimed they were the work of mischievous forest creatures who loved to play pranks on unsuspecting travelers. So, the story begins with a young adventurer named Kofi, a curious and spirited soul who had always been fascinated by the tales of the talking drums. Kofi was not from the mountains, he hailed from a bustling village far below, where life was simple and predictable. But Kofi longed for adventure, and the Pawpaw Mountains called to him like a siren's song. One day, armed with nothing but a satchel of supplies, a sturdy walking stick, and an unshakable sense of curiosity, Kofi set out to uncover the mystery of the drums. As he climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew cooler, and the landscape transformed into a lush, green paradise. The trees seemed to whisper secrets to one another, and the streams giggled as they tumbled over rocks. Kofi felt as though he had stepped into another world, one where magic was real and anything was possible. It wasn't long before he encountered his first surprise, a mischievous monkey named Bongo, who swung down from a tree and landed right in front of him. Bongo was no ordinary monkey. He wore a tiny hat made of leaves and carried a small drum slung over his shoulder. Before Kofi could say a word, Bongo beat the drum twice, let out a cackling laugh, and scampered off into the trees. Kofi, both amused and bewildered, decided to follow him. The trail led Kofi deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the shadows longer. Suddenly, he heard a low, rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from all around him. The talking drums. Kofi's heart raced as he tried to pinpoint the source of the sound, but it was no use. The drums were everywhere and nowhere all at once. Just as he was about to give up, he stumbled upon a clearing where a group of animals had gathered. There was Bongo, still grinning mischievously, along with a wise old tortoise named Tuma, a flamboyant parrot named Pili, and a shy antelope named Zara. They were all seated in a circle, and in the center was a large, ornate drum that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. Before Kofi could ask any questions, Tuma the tortoise spoke in a slow, deliberate voice. "Welcome, traveler. You have come seeking the mystery of the talking drums, have you not?" Kofi nodded, too stunned to speak. Tuma continued, "The drums are not just a sound, they are a message. A message from the mountains themselves. But to understand it, you must listen with more than your ears." Kofi frowned, not quite understanding. Pili the parrot squawked, "He means you've got to feel it, mate. Let the rhythm move you." And with that, Pili began to dance, flapping his wings and bobbing his head in time with the drums. Zara the antelope joined in, her hooves tapping lightly on the ground, and even Bongo started beating his little drum with gusto. Kofi, feeling a bit silly but willing to try anything, closed his eyes and let the rhythm wash over him. At first, he felt nothing but the beat, but then something strange happened. The drums seemed to speak to him, not in words but in feelings. He felt joy, sorrow, excitement, and peace all at once, as if the mountains were sharing their secrets with him. When he opened his eyes, the animals were staring at him expectantly. "Well?" asked Tuma, "what did you hear?" Kofi hesitated, then said, "I heard stories. Stories of the mountains, of the people who lived here long ago, of the animals and the trees. It was like the mountains are alive, and they're trying to tell us something." Tuma nodded approvingly. "You have listened well, young one. But your journey is not over. The drums have chosen you for a reason. You must go to the heart of the mountains, where the true mystery lies." And so, Kofi's adventure continued, guided by his new animal friends. Along the way, they encountered all sorts of surprises. A river that flowed uphill, a cave filled with glowing crystals, and even a grumpy old hermit who claimed to be the guardian of the drums. The hermit, whose name was Abib, was initially reluctant to help, but after some convincing, and a few jokes from Pili, he agreed to show Kofi the way to the heart of the mountains. "But be warned," Abib said, his voice grave. "The heart is not a place for the faint of spirit. Many have tried to reach it, but few have returned. Undeterred, Kofi pressed on, his determination stronger than ever. As they neared the heart of the mountains, the drums grew louder, their rhythm more intense. The air was thick with anticipation, and even the animals seemed on edge. Finally, they reached a massive stone archway, covered in ancient carvings that seemed to tell the story of the mountains. Beyond the archway was a vast cavern, illuminated by a soft, golden light. In the center of the cavern stood the largest drum Kofi had ever seen, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. As Kofi approached the drum, he felt a strange pull, as if it were calling to him. He reached out and touched it, and in that moment, everything changed. The cavern disappeared, and Kofi found himself standing in a world of pure sound and color. The drums were no longer just a beat, they were a symphony, a living, breathing entity that surrounded him. He saw visions of the past, present, and future, all intertwined in a tapestry of sound and light. He saw the mountains being born, the first people who called them home, the animals that roamed their slopes, and the countless stories that had unfolded over centuries. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the vision ended, and Kofi was back in the cavern, the drum silent once more. The animals and Abib were staring at him, their eyes wide with awe. What happened? Kofi asked, his voice trembling. Tuma smiled. You have seen the heart of the mountains, young one. You have heard its song. The drums have chosen you to carry their message to the world. Kofi felt a surge of emotion, a mix of pride, humility, and wonder. He knew that his life would never be the same. As they made their way back down the mountain, Kofi couldn't stop thinking about what he had experienced. He knew that he had been given a great gift, but also a great responsibility. The drums had entrusted him with their stories, and it was up to him to share them with the world. And so, Kofi returned to his village, not as the curious boy who had left, but as a storyteller, a keeper of the mountain's secrets. He told the people of the talking drums, of the animals who had guided him, and of the heart of the mountains. And though some doubted his tale, others listened with rapt attention, their hearts stirred by the magic of the Pawpaw Mountains. Years passed, and Kofi's stories spread far and wide, drawing travelers from distant lands to the Pawpaw Mountains in search of the talking drums. Some claimed to hear them, while others returned empty-handed, but all were touched by the mystery and beauty of the mountains. And though Kofi grew old, he never stopped telling his stories, for he knew that the drums would always be a part of him, their rhythm echoing in his heart. And so, the legend of the talking drums lived on, a tale of mystery, awe, humor, and wonder, passed down from generation to generation. And if you ever find yourself in the Ethiopian highlands, standing at the foot of the Pawpaw Mountains, listen closely. You might just hear the drums, whispering their secrets to those who are willing to listen.